Hello again. Put some stuff together. Here with my good friend Jason, also a good chef. I'm gonna let him take over and explain what he's gonna do. If you will, just explain how much of each product that you put it in there and stuff like that. Jason, take the show.
All right, so Instant Pot vegan chili or pressure cooker vegan chili. Take about 30 minutes to cook total. So we're gonna throw a little Japanese twist on this with some other ingredients. But if you have an Instant Pot or pressure cooker, this is great. So we have some dried shiitake mushrooms that have been rehydrated, and we're going to use that shiitake broth, otherwise known as a shiitake dashi in Japanese cuisine, for part of our base for the liquid for the sloppy joes. Also have like one 15-ounce can of whole tomatoes just pureed in the blender. Probably about half a cup of soy sauce, a little bit of chili powder, and at the end we're going to hit it with some MSG, and we're going to think it was xanthan gum actually. So natural thickeners, truly all vegan. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to kick this baby on. So we're going to hit our saute function so we can saute our onions and mushrooms. We're going to do high temperature. And then I'm going to do saute for like 2 minutes. So like any good pressure cooker, this has to preheat. So we hit our start button. So it's on. It will let me know when it's ready. So it's preheating. This is the Instant Pot Pro, which is one of their newer Instant Pots. I use a couple different pressure cookers, but if you know how this thing works, you gotta let it preheat. And then we will go through the saute process. This takes a few minutes, but well worth it. So after we saute the onions and mushrooms, we'll add our mushroom dashi and our tomatoes, our textured vegetable protein. And for those of you who don't know, textured vegetable protein has 12 grams of protein per quarter cup. So if you definitely are a vegan, good nutrition source, good protein source. So we're just waiting for this thing to preheat, and we will go from there.
So on a side note with the protein, like every time I tell somebody that I'm vegan, they're like, "Where do you get your protein?" And I'm like, "Okay, where do your cows get your protein? Where do your bulls get your protein?" They all get them from vegetables.
Beans, rice, veggies.
Plenty of protein in there.
Soy.
And actually, you only need 40 grams of protein a day. And that's not very a lot. Oh. So there's definitely enough protein to go around. That's never an issue. So don't let that stop you. All right.
So we're just waiting for it to preheat.
Yeah, just waiting for it to preheat. And so when you were talking about the shiitake and everything like that, and you mentioned before, what else can you do with the shiitake when you're creating that broth?
Oh, you can use that broth for miso soup. You can use it for if you want to make like a vegan version of an Espanol sauce or a demi-glace, which are classic French sauces that use the heavy roux and everything else. Use them as a soup base. Like I said, there's just so much you can do with them. And the mushrooms are also a good stand-in for beef. Or you could do like a blended burger. You can just combine it with beef, all kinds of things. So mushrooms are, they're filling. They have a great umami factor, especially the shiitakes. And for those of you who don't know, the umami is that savory taste that we get, and it's found mainly in Japanese cuisine. So we're going to have lots of umami with the soy sauce, the MSG, the tomatoes, which have natural MSG anyway. The shiitake mushrooms have natural MSG. So MSG is not as harmful as it's been made out to be from the incident in the 60s. And we're just going to have a lot of natural flavor in here. So we're halfway preheated on our Instant Pot. Once again, this is just a waiting game. But once we get going, it'll take like 30 minutes start to finish.
Yeah, and hopefully this is not our first time that we'll have Chef Jason here to create a meal, because I'm curious as to other things that he could create, because like he's perking my interest like there is no other. I thought I was learning here and there and becoming creative, but I'm really raw at what I'm cooking, and I'm showing you as I learn. I can learn a lot from this guy. So with that said, if you guys have any question that you want to add to the comments or Facebook me on, because I'm also on Facebook. A lot of people who are my friends are on Facebook too. Any questions for Jason on any kind of meals that you want to see vegan, or anything that you want to create and you just don't know how, let me know. I'm sure he'll be glad to throw his 2 cents in, because this guy obviously knows his stuff. just from the little brief what we're listening to right now, I can definitely tell he knows what he's talking about. So,
all right, so we're almost finished the preheating stage. So what we're going to do in this preheats, since we're not using any oil, we're going to actually saute these with the shiitake mushroom broth. So cost-wise, we're using all of our product with no waste and wasting money. So once this thing beeps, we're going to pour just probably 2 tablespoons, but I work in metric, so for me that's like 30 milliliters. To saute our onions and mushrooms in, we'll saute those for like 2 minutes. Then the rest of the broth will be in, then the tomatoes, and we'll just keep walking through each step. So just wait. If you have the pressure cooker, you know part of it is just waiting for the thing to preheat. So patience is definitely a virtue on this one, my friend.
And then, well, I can't really tilt it because if I tilt it, but this is where the mushrooms were soaking into, and now it's like a broth, right?
Yep, it's called dashi in Japanese. Okay, we're ready, sir. We are hot. So what we're gonna do? Gonna throw that broth in there. You know that sizzle, what you want to hear. So I'm gonna use my handy little cleaver. Gonna throw our onions in there. Cleavers are nice because you have this nice wide blade. And once again, since we're not sauteing any oil, if you don't use oil, just something. So we're gonna give this 2 minutes just to get that. You won't get the browning that you would with the oil because we're not using the oil to saute, but you're still gonna draw out that flavor a little bit. So after this, I'm only doing 2 minutes because once again, being the pressure cooker, the pressure cooker will actually keep all the flavor in once you put the lid on and start it. That's also why I'm not thickening it until the end. So you can definitely hear the sizzle that you want. And for those of you who may have one of these newer Instant Pots, this inner liner has 2 handles. You can actually saute on the stovetop before you put it in the pot itself, but you can definitely hear the sizzle. So I'm not going to use a lot of salt in this dish because we're using the soy sauce and the MSG at the end. And if you're watching your sodium content, that's definitely a good way to go. And just so you know, a teaspoon of salt has about 2,400 milligrams of sodium, which is about what is recommended per day. A teaspoon of MSG has 125 milligrams, and a teaspoon of soy sauce has about 900 and something. So we're definitely not using the natural salt, but we're using some salty products with sodium naturally. And for those of you who don't know, MSG is monosodium glutamate. It is the it is the sodium ion of glutamic acid, which is a naturally occurring material. If you eat Parmesan cheese, drink milk, eat tomatoes, mushrooms, there's a lot of foods that have natural MSG. The MSG powder is just like the pure form. So that's all we're using. All right, so we've got a minute left on our saute, then we're going to hit this thing on pressure cook, and we will go from there. But you can definitely see the steam and everything else.
And I can smell it. It smells wonderful.
All right, so next we're going to hit pressure cook. So we're going to hit pressure cook. We're going to do high pressure, and then we'll hit for our time. I'm going to do this for about 15 minutes of cook time. So it's still going to preheat, but I'm going to go ahead and add my other ingredients. So I'm going to throw in the rest of this broth. So that's probably 2 cups of water at the very end, or after the soaking. I got to hit start first. It always helps. Always helps. We're going to go ahead and add our tomatoes.
And the tomatoes, well, how much of the can?
That was a 15-ounce can, like your normal, but they were whole peeled tomatoes. So I just pureed them, so I'm getting the whole tomato. And this is one of the only canned products I use as a chef because their season is so short for growing. So once again, it's still doing a preheat, but it won't take long because of the still being hot from the sauteing. So this is probably about a half cup of soy sauce. I'm only going to use like a quarter because once again, we don't want too much. Chili powder, depending on how spicy you like it. I do about a tablespoon just using my hands. It's going to go in there. And then TVP. I need my TVP. TVP. I got it right here.
You got it? Okay.
So yep. So I'm going to do 2 cups of TVP. And you have to rehydrate TVP before you cook it, but since we're cooking it in the pressure cooker, it'll rehydrate during the process. So 2 cups of TVP. Total protein in this dish is probably almost 100 grams already. 12, 24, 36, 48, and so 96. Of course, you don't eat the whole thing by yourself. So once again, the preheat, when that hits preheat and it says on, we're going to put the lid on, 15 minutes, and then about 10-minute natural release, then we'll do a quick, and we will go from there.
And so what's the reason you want to rehydrate the TVP?
So it's edible. It's no flavor on its own, but you don't want to have it. It's like tofu. It has no flavor on its own, and just like anything dried, you have to rehydrate it before you use it. So we're almost done with the preheating stage. This is probably about almost a quart total. So this is good for if you're like me, have an appetite. I can eat this probably all by myself, but this will easily serve 4 to 6 people. I would give a cup of sloppy Joe per portion just to make sure we have that protein and the taste and everything else. So we're almost preheated. So once that's on, this lid's gonna go on, and we're gonna just let it do its thing. Actually, I'm gonna put the lid on now, so that way we get going. And then that's
very cool. So
yeah, it locks in place. I forgot to do that earlier, but that just keeps the pressure in, so it's still preheating. But once this hits cook, the pressure is going to stay in there, so no flavor is going to escape. And if you simmer or boil something on a stove, you tend to lose a lot of the moisture. So everything stays in here. And once it hits cook, 15 minutes and a 10-minute release, and we will thicken it at the very end, and we will go from there.
So basically, there's very simple ingredients, not much to it. However, you can, I'm assuming, you could add and
make
any
it your
kind
own.
of flavor that you want, or
I mean, especially if you're vegan, you can do this with a chili. We talked about empanadas earlier.
Yeah.
Breakfast instead of eggs. Scramble this with some tofu, but rehydrate and scramble some tofu. But anywhere you use beef or meat, you could use TVP.
Now, speaking of tofu, when I first asked him, because we had one of my Facebook users, Albert, who's also my realtor. If you ever need a realtor, Albert's the man. When I first asked him to do the sloppy Joe, because Albert asked for it, he said, "What do you want to do? TVP or tofu?" Now, if we did it with tofu, what would the difference be?
The difference would be I would use the extra firm tofu. I would put it in the freezer for a couple days at least so it freezes. And then I would thaw it, and then I would run it through a food processor if you have one, so it looks just like the ground beef. But if you freeze it and then grind it, it has the consistency of ground beef more than if you just ground it on your own. Such with the water content, you have to drain that water content. But if you freeze it and then thaw it and then grind it,
so when you thaw it, how are you thawing it?
In the refrigerator.
Okay.
A couple days. So you can even refrigerate overnight, to be honest. Or freeze it overnight and then use it the next day if you want. But I usually do a couple days. I usually buy extra firm tofu and just leave it in my freezer until I want to thaw it out. So I get that meaty texture.
Okay. There again, did not know that, and I'm going to use that in the future and tell you how it goes, because
spaghetti sauce would be great for this. Pasta sauce. Really? So yeah. I mean, the TVP can be placed in beef anywhere. So the way this works in junior pressure cookers, so as it's preheating, it's building up that pressure, and you have a valve right here that when pressure is reached, it locks into place. So it does take some time to preheat, but I didn't throw the lid on right away because we were still preheating pretty good from the saute function. So this shouldn't take too long to build up, but the machine does all the work. So literally at this point, grab your iced tea and take a drink or two, maybe.
Right, I got my iced tea too. A little bit of iced tea.
So single barrel iced tea, by the way, folks. So yeah, once this hits, this valve they'll start to release some steam before it actually hits the cook mode. But like I said, so right now, if you actually put your hands on the side, you'll feel the pressure building up.
Oh yeah, you can feel it.
Yep, and these things hit about 12 and a half PSI, which is pounds per square inch. But when this hits full pressure, it'll be about 250 degrees. So we're keeping all that flavor in there. And I will thicken it at the very end, and then we'll taste it, and we will go from there. So it's waiting for about 15, 20 minutes.
So we probably won't actually wait for 15 and 20 minutes. And actually, right now, we're pretty much done. Because once we're done with that,
you serve it.
Serve it and eat.
Absolutely.
So there you have it. This is how you make your sloppy Joe with a pressure cooker.
So you can hear it starting to hiss a little bit. You hear that little hiss?
Yeah, I can hear the hiss.
So it's starting to bubble here.
And you can see there's is that the bubble?
That is pressure. Yeah, that's pressure building up.
Yep.
So this is the steam. This is where the steam comes out when you release it. This is the pressure valve, so you know that it is locked in place.
Well, I can feel the steam too when I'm reaching over.
But this little red thing back here will pop up, and then once that does that, it's just going to start cooking.
Very cool. Wow. So first thing I need to do is buy a pressure cooker because if this is going to cut my time in half, oh good Lord, yes,
Absolutely.
all day long. And then thank you, Jason, for doing this video.
Absolutely.
And hopefully you'll come back and do some more because this is very interesting. I have some things in mind that I know I can make with meat that I want to know if he can make without.
Absolutely.
So we'll see in the future what he can bring for us and put some stuff together. Till next time.
So yeah, so now